Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Joe McCall. Welcome to the Real Estate Investing Mastery Podcast. Really glad you're here. You're in for a special treat today because on this podcast interview, I'm going to be interviewing a good friend of mine who is doing something unique that I promise none of you have thought of or really are doing yet. And when you hear this, you're going to get excited and you're going to want to. We're going to be talking about grandma's house or mom's house, one of those two, right? So if you're interested, stay tuned. I got a good friend of mine who is an active investor here in St. Louis. His name is Vincent. We'll bring him on in just a second. But first, I want to let you know, if you've not gotten already, you need to get my book, Recession-Proof Real Estate Investing. This is a solid, legit book, right? With color graphics and images and tables and spreadsheets. And this book is only $7. And you can get it right now at reiproof.com. Let me get the banner. Where did it go? Here, there. reiproof.com. When you get this, you're going to get access to a mind map as well. Some video lessons that I did about this book. You're going to get the spreadsheets and the paperwork, the follow-up scripts. There are several things that you need to do. With every crisis comes an equal amount of opportunity. And when we are in a recession, this isn't anything new. And regardless of where you are politically, regardless of how the housing market is doing, there's a lot of people that are out of work. And the economy, the government, I think, can only prop it up for so much longer. And so there's a lot of opportunity out there, and you need to be able to shift and position yourself in a place of strength. And I talk about the 3 or 4 things that you need to be doing in any market, but especially in a recession. And this is going to make sure that your business stays profitable and grows in a recession and even after the recession is over. So get it right now. Go to reiproof.com. It's just $7 and you get a bunch of extra bonuses and videos and mind maps and calculators and scripts. It's something like I've never done before. I'm real proud of it. I know you're going to love it. The feedback's been really good. So go get it. Go get it right now. reiproof.com. And I think we're ready to bring Philip on. Philip, my man, how are you?
Good, Joe. Thank you for having me.
Philip Vincent, guys, from Mom's House. And we're going to be talking about how he stumbled on this strategy. It's something that he's been doing for years. And a lot of people are like, Philip, how are you doing that, man? How are you getting so many deals? How are you getting so many big deals? And so I wanted to get Philip on. We had coffee the other day here in St. Louis. He's from St. Louis and known each other for a long time. How long has it been, Philip?
I'm going to go with every bit of 9 or 10 years.
Wow. I've
always wanted to be on your show, Joe, so today's the day. We're scratching that off the bucket list. Here we are.
I'm glad you're here, man.
Thank
so
you.
Tell people what it is you do and then go back in history a little bit. How did you get started in real estate?
Sure. I do acquisitions for a big team here in St. Louis, and I'm always asking the question, where are the best deals coming from? I'm a curious guy. It's a constant question that's never going to end. You know, in 20 years, Joe, me and you are going to be asking that same question to each other. Where are the best deals coming from? Mm-hmm. And I was telling somebody earlier, I said, you know, back in the early 2000s, we were spending a lot of money on Yellow Pages. Remember Yellow Pages?
Yeah.
And here we are today. We don't spend any money on Yellow Pages. To go from something so tried and true down to nothing proves that nothing's ever done, right? Even things that I love, like direct mail, right? I love direct mail. But in the end, there's still just spray and pray that you're hoping that person needs to sell. And right now, you're one of 37 people. There's got to be a better way, right? And so how did I start? I started this business backwards. I started off as a developer and a builder, and I worked my way back to wholesaling over 21 years, 22 years, where everybody I talked to is the opposite. They said,
you've been wholesaling for how many years?
I built my first house when I was 20, and I'm 42, so 22 years.
Good for you, man.
Yeah, and I had cousins in the business, and he told me a story about a builder that thought he was going to make 400 grand, and he actually ended up making 800 grand. And my cousin said, "Wouldn't you hate that?" And I said, "Hate what?" And he goes, "Paying taxes on making 800,000." I go, "No, that's exactly the kind of problem I'm looking for." And so my bravado, I think I was a wholesaler, Joe, before I even knew what the term was. I thought it was such a niche that it wasn't big enough to make a living from. I thought, just like most people, that things are done through realtors, right? I was naive to how big it was. But what I find interesting is even back in the early 2000s, I was knocking on doors of dilapidated homes to find the owner, and I'd knock on the neighbor's door, I'd knock on the person. You know, I fearless, right? I was always out breaking eggs, trying to find deals. And so I think I was a wholesaler even before I knew what the term was.
Man, I remember those days. I got started in real estate here in St. Louis 2006. And so you were already doing deals back then.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's hard to find those guys. You're an old guy.
Sure. And I do feel like an old guy. At 42, I do feel like the old guy. I think
I'm
like
just kidding. I was
bad
joke.
Guys are doing acquisitions and they're in their late 20s, right? Being 42, I do feel like the old guy now. I feel like some of the hard parts of that is adjusting my brain with how hot the market is currently. I still think everything's worth what it was worth 5 years ago, and things have been moving fast.
So that's interesting because you were wholesaling deals when the market was screaming hot in 2006 and 7, right?
Yep.
And what's different now than what was back then?
Oh, logic is completely gone now. There's no more logic. I mean, we're in a pandemic, and the real estate's the best I've ever seen in 22 years. So I don't have the answer for that, Joe. We can make a lot of money if we figure that out. Why exactly that is. I'm looking forward to the end of the year. I'm excited to see what the next 6 months brings in this business.
Do you see a big change, a big shift in 2021?
My favorite answer to almost everything right now, Joe, in life is I don't know.
Horrible answer.
No, well, I'm sorry, but I don't know, right? Okay, let's talk about the town we live in, right? If you look at 2004 to 2014, right? The up, down, 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 where we live kind of just stayed like this. So depending on where you live, there might be no change. Or depending on where you live, you might lose your shirt, right? And so I would be real cautious of rehabs that'll take 6 to 9 months to complete. If that's my free advice of the day, just be careful with those. If you can do some.
Would you agree to be careful with the rehabs in the upper price ranges of things?
Well, and let's talk about that. The middle price ranges of things. If you're sub 300,000 in St. Louis, you're good to go. If you're 500 to 900, you're in trouble. That's the scary range. And then I think $1 million plus kind of stays insulated from a market just because they have more cash.
Yeah. So, man, that's crazy. You've been in the business a long time. A lot of people that were active back then are not anymore, are they? I mean, you could probably count on one hand in St. Louis the people that were active then and are still active today. Why do you think that is?
Maybe I'm dumb. I don't know. Stick-to-itiveness. I don't know. Just I subscribe to the get knocked down 8, get up 9. That's just my personality. I've always had duck feathers. You got to be. I think the older I get, the more I've shied away from things that I'm not good at. And so, like the development side, why I'm not a builder anymore is I'm a really bad adult babysitter, which is what I call contracting. And so, what I am really good at is sitting belly to belly with the seller and trying to figure out their problem. And I find the interesting part of everyone. I try to find out what makes them, not the surface junk. I try to really get to know that person. I'm very rarely talking about the house when I'm at their house.
Yeah, that's one thing you're really, really good at. And I know you know this, but like you're really personal and you're really, really good with people. And that's like the most important skill in real estate, in business, right?
Yeah.
Being good with people, listening, following up, paying attention, calling them over and over and over and over and over again until they get you on your podcast.
That's right. That's right. Never taking no, right?
never taking no.
That's right.
And what's cool too, I want to just point this out. You've been doing the same thing, and wholesaling works no matter the market, right? No matter if it's going up, flat, down, for 20-something years.
Yeah, you just have to adjust the dial each day, right? Who might buy it from you changes, and who might sell it to you really stays the same. I like what your book was called. It's the recession proof, right? What are we doing that's recession proof? Because you should be thinking about it. Remember I said I don't know? So you want to be, I'm not conservative by any stretch, but you want to be, really think about, am I doing something that's recession proof? And I see the hot button seems to be right now is like cold calling and text messaging, right? And I look at those as like crashing waves. They're hot today, but will they be here in 5 years? Is anybody going to go to jail for it? I don't want to do things that might put me in jail. And I think that, some of these things out there are like, whoa, and so I like things that are, and we'll talk about it today. I'm in a very unsexy business of the senior living world. And it's you talk about recession proof. I always say, this is a personal thing I say, but do you ever think about your great-grandmother's great-grandmother? And people are always like, I don't even know her name. And I go, exactly. I said, we matter for very little. And can we help people through this journey of life? Can we have a good life? Can we have, when people brag to me that they work 80 hours a week, I always say, I feel sorry for you. That is the last thing I want to do. There's CEOs out there that have a way worse life than I do, and I think I don't mind working. I would never mind working, but I always want to work so smart that I'm investing in my own future. Like I'm planting a seed that's going to give me a rolling harvest.
That's good.
I would have been good at insurance based on that, but I never got in that business. So,
all right, well, let's talk about the senior living, because that's one of the you're the guy in St. Louis that gets all the big deals, because you've tapped into something pretty unique. Talk about that.
So when people hear the word senior living, I just want to point out to your listeners that a lot of them think about what's called the residential assisted living section, where you take a big ranch that's got 5 bedrooms and you make it into a senior living community. That is not what I do at all. But what I do is the people moving into that 5-bedroom community or that 150-bedroom community or that 280-bedroom community, the average Joe is 3.8 move-ins or move-outs a month. So in St. Louis, we have about 250 in our metro area, senior living communities total. Take that times 3.8.
How many again?
250. That's the full metro Illinois, like our full 3 million metro. And that's from, your private pay down to Medicaid. And it's blinding how many levels of care there are too. It's not just from adult daycare all the way up to memory care. And so there's tons of levels based on who the person is and what they need. And so each one of those has an opportunity that when you see that big crane in the sky building that 280 bed community, almost every one of those people had a house. And the moment they were told that they had to move into senior living, nobody does this on their own, right? If me and you were brothers, do you think we're taking our healthy mom for a visit to a senior living community for fun? Right? No way, right? It's usually thrust upon them, and it's literally called crisis care, Joe. When these families find out that they have to move mom into senior living, usually after a surgery or a fall, it's called crisis care management.
Yeah.
And so at that exact, I always say what I do, I get to wear my cape. I didn't tell them the bad news that mom can't live on her own anymore. I didn't tell them that place costs $8,800 a month that we picked out, because you're not going to pick out the cheap place. You're going to pick out the nicest one, because there's some guilt involved, right? I can't take care of my own mother anymore. I didn't tell them how much it cost, but in that moment they realized we're going to have to sell the house to pay for this, right? And it's the house and the stuff. So I would say the most important part, Joe, is getting mom the best care. If you start with that, if you're always thinking, how is mom going to get the best care? The house and the stuff are right there alongside of it going, we need some help with this. Because on average, the adult children live 400 miles away. So the burden that falls, what I call is the most responsible child. And let me point out, when I say child, the oldest, most responsible child I've ever helped was 80. He was helping his 98-year-old mother-in-law to sell her house. And so when I say most responsible child, I'm usually talking about people in their 60s helping their parents in their 80s. And
wow.
Yeah.
So you call it Mom's House is the name of your business, but like,
yeah, Mom's House. That's what people call it. Yeah.
Are there dads that are doing this? Was it mostly moms?
What's funny about that? In the industry, even if dad's still alive, what are we going to do with Mom's house? Your mom kind of, at least for me, mom kind of ran everything, right? So even if dad's lucky enough to be the one that's still alive, which, by the way, if you're a man and you make it to senior living, Joe, you're outnumbered 7-1. And
7-1?
7-1. So you'll have a lot of dance partners if you ever make it to senior living. It's almost always men. We put off our health. I'll give you the numbers. The average stay in senior living is 28 months. Men, it's only 22 months, and women, it's like 37. You're like, well, how is there that big a discrepancy? We push things off longer, we die quicker. It's all those reasons. And so when I call it Mom's House, it's a loving term that in the industry, it's like, what are we going to do with Mom's house?
All right. So, man, it's crazy. My grandpa, by the way, is 97 and still lives by himself in his mobile home in Denver, Colorado. And it just makes you think a lot, doesn't it? Like, what am I going to do? Are my kids going to take care of me?
I have sons, so I think about that a lot. I wish I had daughters, because you get taken care of better a lot of times.
Okay, so this is near and dear to my heart, because my wife's mom, she was widowed twice, and her husband was smart enough to save and invest a lot of money. So when he passed away, she was still in her 70s. She had another 15, 20 years. But she knew, it's funny because she's really fiercely independent, and she knew she didn't want her kids to force her to go. So she went herself to a senior living facility, a really nice one in St. Louis, Del Mar Gardens on Gravois. And she, because her husband was so smart, she had enough money to buy 2 units together. And so she had her own bedroom and a living room and a kitchen and 2 bathrooms, which is rare to have in a facility like that, side by side, that big, right?
Sure.
But anyway, she loved it there. She actually had a good time and made a lot of friends. Grandkids were all the time coming over to visit her. But she lived for, I think, 17 or 18 years in that place.
Wow.
But loved it. And she liked the convenience of it. She had good view of the garden. She had the best room in the whole place. But anyway, I think about that thinking, I want to be, as a husband, I want to be able to provide that to my wife if she lives longer than me, right? So it's just something that's an emotional thing. I think everybody has their own story to tell with this stuff, right?
It's very emotional. I mean,
yeah,
we're talking about your own mother, the person that took care of you better than probably anybody else on the planet in your life. And what's happening today, Joe, is people are living a long time and they're outliving their money. And like you said, it's a scary thought. It's a sombering thought to outlive your money. And even people that have vast fortunes. I know a guy that's almost 100 and he has in-home health care, costs about 30 grand a month for 24-hour care, 30 grand a month, and he's almost out of money. But he also lived to be 100. So no one planned it that way, right? So a man that was a millionaire is almost out of money because, well, he has very expensive care. And I'll say this about your mother-in-law or grandma-in-law. She's the exception. Most Americans have, what's the stat? They don't even have $400 for an emergency update in their home, right? And so when mom has a $2,800 pension, but you take her to a place that's $8,800 a month, where is that money going to come from?
Yeah.
If me and your brothers were like, well, I'm not splitting that with you, or there's always a brother or a sister that's doing better than the other, and it's like all this fighting. So what it always comes down to, Joe, is mom's sitting on the equity in that house. And a really surprising stat is some of these communities here in St. Louis, if mom or dad can pay private pay pricing for 1 or 2 years, follow me here, because the average stay is like 28 months. If they can pay private pay for 1 or 2 years, depending on the community, they will let mom or dad live out the rest of their days under the Medicaid plan. That's a huge stat that people don't know, and they don't publicize it because the private pay communities we don't do Medicaid. Like they have their nose in the air about Medicaid. They don't put that on the door, right? But why that's good for you and I, let's say, it's our mother we're talking about. You want to move mom once. Like your mother-in-law had that great experience. She made friends, and people usually do better when they're not isolated. One of the worst parts about COVID right now is the isolation. People are dying from isolation. And so getting into the community gets mom the best care, usually gets her some playing card partners. If you like watching Cardinal baseball, eating pie, and there's a lot of activities,
That's all she did. She'd watch every Cardinal game and play bridge almost every second night.
Yeah, that's right.
It's funny too. I have a friend. He wants to be really good. So he's like in his 30s, and he's practicing learning how to play bridge, pinochle, pickleball, and some other activities, so that when he is old, he'll be like the best of everybody.
I love it. That's a great idea. Pickleball is fun, and I like pinochle, so I would play with that guy. That's good.
All right, so how do you find these people, right? How do you find the one that needs to sell their house? They need to sell mom's house. How do you find them?
Great question. And so it's not the journey, or it's not the hunt for the adult child. It's the hunt for the person that has the trust and the ear of the adult child. So let's talk about direct mail for a second. Could you imagine if the mailman came to your door and said, Joe, call this guy. He's the most trusted investor in St. Louis. Don't call these other 37 postcards. Call this guy. You're like, okay, shoot, why wouldn't you, right? That's from your mailman. Let's forget that for a second. Let's talk about the person that you and I as brothers pick to help our mom get the end-of-life care. How much more important is that than your mailman's referring someplace, right? This is a person and there's somebody called I'm going to go through the list, right? There's there's hundreds of jobs in senior living, but there's like 8 or 9 that are really, really great. This is what your listeners will want to hear. Is the stakeholders in senior living go from the proprietor of the senior living community, the director, the finance director, the marketing director, the social worker. Some communities have social workers, some don't. And that's all inside the community. All those people have referred me business year over year. But outside of that is the vendors that work at that exact same moment. So you've got elder care attorneys that specialize in crisis care. You've got aid and attendance benefits providers. So aid and attendance is one of those little known things that if you served in the military, or your spouse, you can get these benefits to pay for your senior living. How great, but what do you know? They don't tell you about it. You have to know about it. And so people that do aid and attendance benefits have been a great lead source for me, because if you're getting that benefit at that exact moment, you're usually paying for senior living. For me, I'm looking for timing, right? We try so hard to make our phone ring. As investors, we're all in the marketing business. We spend 90% of our time trying to make our phone ring. And this is the exact opposite. This is people raising their hand saying, I need to sell my house. They almost always have 100% equity, and they almost always have a house that needs to have something done to update it. And so as investors, they're the holy grail of leads. Usually they come to me in the form of, hey, Phil, can you be at Bob's house at 2:30 on Tuesday to make an offer? Yes, I can, right? I don't have to build trust. The trust is already built. That person's already said, Philip is the trusted guy. Philip is my go-to guy. If I can just show up and be halfway competent, you can close a lot of these houses because they're so teed up for what we look for as investors. And I really try hard. I don't have to be I'm a salesperson by nature, but I don't have to be the salesperson. I'm more can we figure this out together? Can we find a lot of times, Joe, it's not even about the price of the house. It's about, what are we going to do with that piano that mom loved? What are we going to do with that hutch? Will that fit? You're fixing all these other problems. And when you do, you can have a job where you help people make a great living and not work the crazy amount of hours that a lot of guys do. It's like, we both subscribe to like that, put our life first and then build a business around it. I think both you and I both care about that a lot. I'm really big into that. I don't want to work 90 hours a week. I got young sons, like we said, that I want to hang out with. I've got a wife that I love. And so we make this business really hard. And I think if you're going to work anyway, how much better is it to build relationships that are like an oil well that give you appointments year after year, month after month, versus always being a slave to that last direct mail drop or that last pay-per-click campaign, And so I've gotten off of that rat wheel. Is that how you say it?
Rat race.
Rat race. I've gotten out of the rat race, the hamster wheel, right? And so it's now they come to me versus me chasing them down. That's where to be. That is recession proof.
Okay, let me play the devil's advocate here for a second.
Sure.
Why? Because I know somebody's listening to this is thinking, if you really wanted to help them, you would just list it on the MLS and sell it for the highest price possible. But
Great.
You're coming in as an investor to undercut them and get it for the cheapest price possible or something. What do you say to somebody who says that?
One of my chapters is called "Do You Just Lowball?" Right? It's a great question. I am very transparent with my numbers. I like to tell the family exactly what the house will sell for in a retail setting, right? The big number. When I tell them that, I usually see them go, "Oh, I didn't think he'd ever say that number to me." How we make our value as investors is I can do a $60,000 rehab for 40. That's our 20 grand profit right there, Joe. And for them, they live in North Carolina and Moss and St. Louis, and who's gonna, by the way, the market's so good right now. You know what else we're forgetting? It's really hard to find contractors that are competent.
Oh my gosh, that's a great point.
And who's gonna pay for it? Remember, mom needs money. By the way, realtors, I love realtors. Okay, I'm gonna keep answering your question the same way. Realtors bring me deals all the time. Why? The family does not want to do the steps needed to get the house ready for the market, even in a great market. Yeah. Realtors help me all the time. They walk in and the first thing they say is, clean this place out. Well, Joe, that in itself is a 2-month job for even families that get along.
And how stressful is that? For the mother?
Well, for the adult child. There's one adult child, we're in here in St. Louis. There's a lot of 6-kid families out here, right? There's one kid that they're getting the stress from their brothers and sisters who think they're not doing it right. They're still having a needy mom who does need help. She's still got doctor's appointments and all this stuff. It's usually a female that still lives in town next to mom. Not always, I'm being stereotypical there, but it's a lot of times it's a female, and the adult children from all over the country say, "You're crazy, mom doesn't need that kind of care, and we should sell the house for $1 million." And keep in mind, we're talking about 50 and 60-year-olds. They still have lives. I was just talking to a guy the other day that this happened to him, and he said it was a 30-hour-a-week job to get his Nana placed for almost 3 months because she had an 80-pound dog. So the dilemma of having that dog cost him, he said, 30 hours a week to try to get it all figured out. And he goes, "I wish I would have met you 4 months ago." And let's talk about this too. That most responsible child still has kids of her own, still has a husband at home. And I've seen people break up during that time if the loved one stays sick for too long, because now that needy husband is like, "Where are you at all the time, right? Why aren't your brothers and sisters helping out?" And there's resentment building. Like, it's one of the most stressful times in people.
I'm getting stressed just thinking about it. Goodness.
Yeah. Well, and you know what's made me, Joe? It's made me a minimalist because the stuff a lot of times is harder. I mean, I go in 20 houses a week, right? If I drug something home from every house, I would end up, I got one for you. Instead of calling it hoarding, if you like the person, call it aggressive collector.
Aggressive collector.
You're an aggressive collector, right? I don't want to be an aggressive collector. I've learned that my wife and I have this rule: if we haven't used it or touched it in 24 months, we don't need it in our house. And so the houses I see
did you say you look at 20 houses a week?
Sure. I mean, whether it's online or I look at 20 opportunities, I don't walk through that many. I think in my 22 years, you learn what's not a deal. That's one thing about mom's house. I don't know if it's a good deal in Chicago or North Carolina or the West Coast, but in St. Louis, if you give me the address, I can probably tell you what it's worth, just because I've been doing it for so long.
Man, talk about that. Totally makes sense, because you could go clean it up, find good luck with finding a contractor, managing that from out of town,
paying for it to get the house ready to maybe eventually sell, and then deal with the realtors, the picky buyers, the inspection report, the
inspections, all of the stress with that.
Yep.
You're giving I like the way Tom Kroll explains this. You're giving in exchange for your price. You're giving them the speed and convenience of selling their house
and surety. If I can do a $60,000 rehab for 40, all they've done is punted all that effort. They've gotten the end result in 2 or 3 weeks instead of 6 months. And the reason why I say 6 months is if it takes 2 months to clean it out, because you can't start your rehab until it's cleaned out. And then let's say you got lucky and you rehab it inside of 2 months, and then the market's good, so you sold it inside of 30 days. That's still 6 months away. And if mom's got that deficit of her pension versus, there's a lot of stress of who's going to pay for this. Joe, there's not a better time to meet a family. The adult child that lives here, and then the brothers fly into town from wherever they live, and to catch them on that third weekend of bringing boxes out of mom's basement up to the dumpster. And I say, guys, stop right now. The heirlooms left the first day, Joe. Like heirlooms, I don't ever see heirlooms. They're gone. It's stuff, and then mainly trash after that, because mom's basement held everything. It held the VHS tapes, that all the stuff from her son's divorce and 10 years ago. It's like a landing pad for stuff, and that workout equipment that's in pristine condition. Everything that lives in a basement. Taxes from 1973. Like, people don't throw things away.
I wonder, have you ever tried to get leads from dumpster companies?
Sure, and so let's keep going. So we only really did the senior living community side. So outside of that, you've got the attorneys that do crisis management. You've got the aid and attendance benefits providers. One of my favorites is placement agents. So this is a new business. It's only like 20 years old. Placement agents are like real estate agents for the senior living world. And so they are phenomenal because they're sitting there in the house with the families going, "Hey, I know a guy named Philip that you would buy it just the way it sits. You don't have to clean it out." And they're like, "Oh my God, please give me that guy's number," right? And my job is practically done. If you can show up with a smile on your face and be a little competent, you can buy a lot of houses. Then also downsizing companies, which I think is right along with what you're saying with the dumpster companies. I'll give you the stats for St. Louis, or I should even step further back. There was a company called Everything But the House, and they raised some venture capital, like $60 million. And they said, we're only going to do estate sales of $15,000 and above, because the logistics of doing an estate sale is very expensive. And so in St. Louis, all my estate buddies say, good luck with that. The average sale price of people's possessions in St. Louis is $5,000, with the cost of doing the sale around $5,000. So all of that stuff is worth almost always. But they always think it's worth $1 million. And by the way, I've seen $1 million collections, but it is very rare, Joe. Most people that I see, the stuff is just memories and a hurdle. And I always say the best use for that stuff is to get it back to the person who has the memory.
Wow. All right. So you go in and talk about what kind of offer do you make? Is it just always a cash offer? Do you ever offer owner financing or some kind of creative if they're, if you're miles apart in price? Or
well, we do have a retail arm of our business as well. So a lot of times we'll refer to that. Most people we buy from are 82 years old that have lived there for 40, 50 years, right? Very rarely is it a 2-year-old house that they just moved into. And if they are, then we'll meet them at their level. In my 22 years, it's hard for new people to get to that abundance mentality, right? Where you're because you live and die on every single deal. And for me, I try to put my best foot forward with my offer. When I first started off in this business, sometimes people would get mad at my offer. And I realized I wasn't explaining my offer right. And today I haven't had somebody mad at me in probably a decade, because when I take them through the journey of what I think the house could sell for, what I think needs to be done to it, and then where my offer landed, they're like, okay, I understand where you're coming from. Whether they say yes or not, right? But they at least know that I didn't just pick a number out of the air and hope that they took it.
Well, you said you have a retail side of your business. What do you mean by that?
Well, sometimes we'll list a house in a retail setting, like a realtor, but it's rare. Our focus is the rehab side, and so we do a lot of rehabs a year, and so we want to fill that pipeline full of rehabs. And I think why I specialize in this space, they need to sell, they have equity, and they have a house that needs to, have something done to it. Very, very rarely is a house updated to 2020 standards, right?
Yeah, it has a lot of deferred maintenance.
Right, and that generic story of dad passed away 8 years ago, mom's been doing the best she can on that fixed income. She can't take care of it the way dad did. I hear that a lot, but she's doing the best she can. Nobody's mad at mom, That's the other thing I like about this business, Joe. Like, some people work like foreclosures and divorces. Those people are there's some blame there usually on both sides, right? Nobody gets old and nana for getting old. That's just part of life. And so everybody's there to help. The senior living world is very collaborative if they trust you. But what they want to do, Joe, is they want to put you in two boxes, both of which are negative. They want to think of you as an investor. And if they do that, then they think, well, you might take advantage of grandma, which is never good, right? And they should be cautious of that, because most people in real estate are very transactional. Or they want to think of you as a realtor. And their crocodile brain shuts off when they think of you as a realtor, because they already know what a realtor is. And they already have a realtor that they work with, and they don't need you. So I position myself as the solution for remember all those different stakeholders I went over? You better believe a proprietor of a senior living community and a social worker are not even close to the same human. So how you approach them, what you say is very different. And each one of those has their own what's in it for them. And so in my 8 years of working on the senior living side, I've learned through bumps and bruises and tenacity. And even when I got punched, and said, oh, I didn't say that right, what I realized was I had to keep going back and trying to figure it out, because I knew the timing was too perfect. They raised their hands and said to the world, I need to sell my house right now. And so for us in the world of trying to find the best deals, instead of the spray and pray methods, this is the exact opposite. Deals come right to me.
All right. So talk to somebody who's interested in pursuing some relationship marketing like this.
Yeah.
What advice do you give to them?
Get training. Definitely would be a big one. But I think I've talked to people that have had this idea in the past, and they said, I went out and I tried to make relationships, and I walked right in and I said, hey, I'm Bob, and I buy houses from old people moving into nursing homes, and it didn't go well. And I'm like, you think it didn't go well? I said, you said about 2 or 3 things that were offensive, and they don't even know they're doing it, Joe. You and I have known each other a long time. Think about all the real estate investment meetings we've been to. In our business, what I love, right? I'm a real estate guy. We're always showing pictures of our checks, right? It's like what we do in our business. I've been networking in senior living now for almost 10 years, 9 years. I've never seen the size of someone's check yet. There is no pictures of checks, right? It's not that kind of a business. And if you come in without the help mentality, they're going to smell it. If you come in and let them put you in the box of investor or a realtor, you're not going to have the success that you want. And so I'm really, I really train people on how to be a solution for that person's problem and asking the right questions to unlock their brains to where they're like, well, yeah, I have that happen every day. And of course I want you to help me with that. And so once you unlock that, the water gets real warm and they're very collaborative once they trust you.
I remember I interviewed somebody on my podcast, and I wish I could remember who it was, but they said they measure success by how many hugs they get in a deal. They were investors, and they didn't care about the money as much as they cared about the hugs.
I love it.
And he said every single deal that he's ever done, he always gets a hug, and that's his goal. That's his goal. And I thought, man, that is so smart, isn't it? Yeah. Because when you have that attitude and that's your perspective and your goal to get a hug from them, you'll win every time, right?
Yep.
You'll win every time. And if it doesn't turn into a deal, well, you're not that guy that can be accused of taking advantage of somebody in a poor situation,
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish I could remember if anybody listening to this remembers that podcast, it was from at least 3, 4, 5 years ago. Let me know. I've got, I'm approaching 850 episodes, I think.
Woo! That's a big number, Joe.
Yeah. So anyway,
you want to talk about hugs for a second? I have just a quick little story about a hug guy.
Yeah.
In a little town called St. Charles near us, good little, perfect little blue collar town, right? A small little ranch. He said he does rehabs for a living. This guy who came to me with a deal, right? And he was representing his mother-in-law because the 4 daughters did not get along, is what he told me. So I'm meeting with a man whose mother-in-law's house it was. And at the end of it, I said, why am I here? You said you do rehabs for a living. He goes, Phil, if I bought this house, rehabbed it, and made a penny, I would get big, bad word at every family reunion from now on out. I would get cussed out at every family reunion from now on out because I did that to grandma or did that to mom, right? And he's like, so a man that even has the skill set to do these rehabs because of the family dynamic sometimes would rather have somebody like me come in and just because, it's one of the most trying times in somebody's life. And so we get to wear our cape, right? We didn't tell mom that she has to move into senior living. We didn't tell her it costs $8,800 a month. We're the person that unlocked the equity out of that house, and nobody wants to rehab the house. And if they do, Joe, I just don't get that lead, right? If they want to do a big rehab, I just don't get that lead. But the people that call me are like, I would like to listen. Tell me more.
I just found that episode. It's episode 551.
Woo.
And it was REI in my car while I'm driving.
Yeah.
And so I was talking to somebody, and I talked about my conversation with that somebody in episode 551. He measures success by a hug. And so I'm going to listen to that later. But if anyone else is interested, I recommend you check it out. Episode 551, realestateinvestingmastery.com. I'm on episode 911.
Oh, wow.
I need to hurry up and
let's go with the Porsche reference.
More episodes.
Yeah, let's do the Porsche reference, not the other reference.
All right. So, Philip, give us an example of what a conversation looks like or sounds like when you are approaching, an attorney or somebody in a senior care facility. What does that conversation go like?
Yeah, I never say, I'm an investor, I'm a realtor. You don't want that to happen, right? So you say, I have found that when I'm helping families that are going through this, and I always put it back on them I always like questions. Do you ever find that the family is not prepared to get the house ready for the market? And he's like, yeah, every single day, right? Because the attorney wants to close his file. And he can't until some of these things are buttoned up, right? So he needs somebody that he can trust that's going to help the family navigate, because the family's not getting along, Joe. Even families that do get along don't get along in these cases. The claws come out. And so I've seen every type of fight inside of a family. And so when you meet like with an attorney, I bring a little closure. Like that family usually is always like, can we come back and take a look at it after you rehab it? I'm like, of course you can. I would love to show you guys this house. That makes them feel good that all of their memories, the house they grew up in, it's going to be taken care of by somebody that's trusted, and they're going to make it better for the next family.
And a lot of these kids, they grew up in this home, right?
Almost always, Joe. One of my favorite questions is, which bedroom did you sneak out of? And they always, and they're always, they'll always tell me, right? Because that's where all their memories was.
Which bedroom did you sneak out of?
I ask them that every time. They always think that I get a kick out of that one.
So they're just the fact that you're talking about, I'm going to restore this house, make it look really nice. You can come and look at it. I'll send you pictures.
Yeah.
That's got to mean a lot to them, right?
Oh, and they always tell me, Mom always wanted to open this wall up. And I go, oh, we're going to open that wall up. And they're like, oh, I can't wait to see that,
Wow. All right. So you go back to the conversations you have with the attorney. How do you approach them? What do you say to them?
So through networking, you find them at their level. Very rarely, people are listening today. They think, okay, I'm going to walk into that senior living community and put my hand out and just make a relationship. And Joe, that's not the right way to do it. That's the way I tried to do it in 2011. And it's a really good way to put your foot in your mouth. They're almost like a hospital setting there, and it's just not the right time. And so people that are out, and there's a lot of networking happening in senior living, just like our real estate world. It's done a lot more gentle. And so you ask questions that I already know the answer to, right? Do you ever have that situation where this is what the family's going through? And they'll say, and then I ask for the sale immediately. This is not building a 3-year relationship to ask for the sale. That's not my nature. I say, are you working with anyone right now that could use a service like that? And you'll get 1 of 2 answers, Joe. They'll say, yes, I am. And I'm like, great. Can I go there and make an offer, right? I mean, I met this guy, and inside of 2 minutes, I'm asking for the sale or the opportunity to go buy a house, right? And then, or the other thing they might say is, man, I wish I would have met you 2 weeks ago. Ed and his family had a hell of a time trying to sell that house. I wish I would have known you. And either way, they just realize that Philip is a solution for their problem that they face every day. And all of those different stakeholders have their varying degrees of what they want out of it. A proprietor of a senior living and a financial guy, you can have a money talk with him, but with the social worker, I don't talk about money ever.
All right. So then what are you doing on a daily basis to try to, do you call these people up? Hey, how's it going? It's been a month. Do you have anything for me? Or
sure, I play a lot of Top Golf. I like to grab drinks. I like to do lunch. I'm a firm believer in that never eat alone book. Like if I'm going to be out to lunch, I'm going to invite somebody. Now that my relationships are built, I kind of have enough. I teach a model. It's called 20 is plenty. And what I mean by that, Joe, is if you just have 20 people in the senior living world, the right people that think of you when that situation happens, you can do 20 to 40 deals a year. And I've already said these are my favorite leads, right? Let me just put the icing or the cherry on the top. They're also free. And they're ongoing. I mean, come on, guys. I mean, we make this business so hard, and so I really love what I do, Joe. You know that. I'm passionate about the seniors, and it's the real estate side is like it's a happy way to do real estate.
You work with one of the largest buyers in St. Louis.
Yep.
Would you say that's fair?
As far as the little guys go, we're one of the biggest. That's right.
Yeah, they're one of the biggest. And they do a lot of outbound direct to seller marketing.
Oh, yeah.
And do you still do that yourself?
Well,
do you still work some of those leads with them?
No, we have people for that. That sounds pretentious, but we have people that do that. Like we're a big company. But when I sit through the meetings every single week, because we look at every single metric, I know how hard it is, and it's getting worse right now. Today is Tuesday. I have my morning, every Tuesday at 10, I have my meeting every week.
And this company in particular, I don't know anybody else in the industry, and I know a lot of people. I don't know anybody else that tracks their numbers like they do. It's insane.
So I sit through that college every day, right? Of what's working, what's not, and we're not afraid to try things. We've done pizza top boxes. We've done for churches, the bulletin. We've done church bulletins. We did a $25,000 mailer one time, Joe, for the cellophane, the high color, like there's a bunch of cards in there. 25 grand, Joe. We got 0 houses out of it. You know how bad that hurts?
Are you talking about like the Val Pack coupon?
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You probably got it, and so you're like, nope. And so we don't mind trying things, and so and just fundamentally because we are a reputable company, we stay away from like your bandit signs, and we don't do any text message blasting. Not that they don't work, but we're just not in that cheesy. So we don't have to be anymore. We're in that we're trusted, and that helps a lot to build credibility. I always say to people, like, if the name of your business is like Cash Money Home Buyers, you might want to think about that, right? If you're going to get in senior living, it needs to be a little more hugs and kisses than Cash Money Home. This is an example.
So what would be a good example of a company name?
Sold on seniors, or what I mean, like something that's putting them first.
Mom's House. Is that trademarked?
Joe, I like simple names, my friend. My 8-year-old can spell it. momshouse.com.
I love it. So you've written, have you done a book? I think you were talking about that, right?
I do. I have a book. It's called The Black and White of Gray. We're getting ready to release it here pretty soon.
It's called The What and the What and the What?
The Black and White of Gray. The
Black and White of Gray. What's that about?
The journey that adult child is having with their parents. Wow. And what I've learned. Yeah, kind of, it's a, if I had $1 for every time somebody said, I wish there was a book. I wish there was a book I could have read before I went through this. It would be a lot. No, it's like having a kid, right? No one's prepared to have a kid. You can do all this stuff, but you're never prepared because mom's great until she isn't, right? And now all of a sudden you're making these decisions. Now, I do feel like, let's talk about this for a second. Probate leads. I'm a huge fan of probate leads. They're some of the best leads for real estate investors, right? Let's understand the difference between what I do, which is the industry started to call pre-probate. I actually have preprobate.com as well. Pre-probate, which is nothing right now, but pre-probate leads, why they're exponentially better than probate leads is simple. If you and I are brothers and our mother has passed away and a probate case is opened, you and I, Joe, care about every dollar that the house sells for because what's in it for us? And when you're helping your mom move into senior living, whether you get 92 grand or 96 grand or 88 grand for the house, I'm not going to say it doesn't matter, but it kind of doesn't matter because that money is going to go sit into an account and that $6 grand a month or whatever that it's going to until it's gone. And then Medicaid's going to kick in. So for the only time I've ever seen in real estate where it's more about, can you be trusted? Can you show up and close? Yeah, and you talk about like the investor that I want, the person that keeps me up at night is the one that's only strategy is to wholesale. I can't work with that person because if you ever wrote a 30-day contract and your only outlet was to wholesale it and you didn't do what you said you would because you didn't get it wholesaled, that butterfly effect would ripple throughout the whole, this loving mom's house brand that we're building, right? And so I want somebody, I don't care if you wholesale, I'm not against wholesale, I love wholesaling. It's just, if you write a contract, do what that contract says, whether you wholesale it or not.
That's really good. And I've talked about that a lot over the years. Like you need to have the intent and the means to close on that property.
Yep.
Doesn't mean you can't assign it or wholesale it, but don't enter into the contract if you can't buy it.
Yes. And I hear just like crazy stories about people's business practices to call the day before closing and try to renegotiate. Joe, no, and that's where I think, just our industry is a little too brazen for the senior living world. And so I think if you have empathy and put that seller first, you can build something really great. And so, it's a different business. It's more, it's a really good business for people who care about others.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And you get a feel good feeling out of it.
Yep.
I want to address this too, because I know somebody's listening to this who doesn't have the money to close on these houses.
Okay.
And they're freaking out wondering, oh my gosh, like I can't do this. Do I have to have the money in the bank? So what are some of the access to funds that you use to close these deals?
Sure. Banking relationships are great, but that's just one of many ways to fund deals. If you have a track record of buying and selling houses, there's so much money on the sidelines right now that would give you a back rub to get an 8% return on their money, right? They would just love that, right? They would love to have anything safe. And you'd be surprised if you put it out there, your friends and family. You can do private money. There's hard money options out there. Hard money, while it's expensive, it gets you in the game. I feel like real estate's one of those only businesses that I know of where you might have thought you were going to make 50 grand, but then you make 5 and you're like, oh, I only made 5. You got paid for that education, right? What a great business that you didn't make 50, but you still made 5 grand, but you learned from it. And can you get better on the next one? Right.
The great thing about working with hard money lenders too, like your company does, if they won't lend on the deal, it's not a good deal to buy anyway.
It's a good safety net.
Yeah.
It's a good safety net.
You may need to go back and before you actually, or the day before you're committed to close, it's better to go back a day after you sign the contract to negotiate a better price, right? During your contingency.
Sure.
Cool. So any final words of advice, Philip, you give to somebody who's thinking about getting into this?
Thank you for having me on, Joe. Words of advice are, you can build something amazing here from a lifestyle perspective, and you're going to work for it one way or the other. Why not? People always say, I can't network. I can't go out there and network, Joe. I can't do that. And I'm like, do you ever buy houses from wholesalers? They're like, yeah, all the time. I said, do you ever buy houses from real estate agents? They're like, yeah, all the time. I said, where did you meet those people? I networked. So what I'm saying is we all are networkers. I'm just saying that the industry is not doing it in the right spaces. And so I'm shining a big bright light that the senior living industry and the real estate industry are good. They're like peanut butter and chocolate if you know how to do it. And it's a great way to blacklist yourself if you don't know how to do it. And so I'll leave you with that.
That's good. All right. So how can people get a hold of you, Philip? What's the next step if somebody wants to get more information from you on how to do more of this?
I'm so simple. momshouse.com.
momshouse.com. I'm going to create a banner.
Yeah, do it.
momshouse.com. How's that?
Oh, perfect. Look how pretty that is. I like simple domain names. I'm a simple guy.
momshouse.com. Cool. What do they see when they go there?
It's really a public-facing website. We deal a lot in the senior living industry from a national level. So I'm building out a network of trusted investors nationwide that are going to be like the boots on the ground in the local level. So like if you're in Albuquerque, right, you go build these relationships with all those stakeholders. And then from the top down, we're building an appointment engine for the senior living. For the real estate world.
Beautiful.
It is.
Well, Philip, I appreciate you getting on the show. Finally, I know I had to twist your arm. I had to twist your arm to get on the show, but this has been really good.
Thank you.
Good. I think this is an important topic to talk about. As investors, we need to put a better foot forward, right? And we need to be more conscientious of our industry, how we're presenting ourselves. Yeah. Little things like when you say you're going to close, you're going to close. Don't go back to the seller, and be more sensitive. I think one of my biggest takeaways from this podcast has been be more sensitive to with these families that are going through these things, and there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. And it's important to get that figured out.
I agree.
Cool. All right. momshouse.com. People can find you on Facebook too, or are you more active on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter? Facebook. Philip Vincent.
You got it.
All right. Thank you, man. We'll see you all later.
Thank you for having me.
Bye, all right, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.